The champagne glass slipped from my trembling fingers and shattered on the marble floor of my cousin's mansion. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward me, some curious, others filled with that familiar mixture of pity and disdain I'd grown accustomed to over the years. "Look who finally decided to show up." Marcus's voice cut through the elegant chatter like a blade. My cousin stood there in his $1,000 suit, surrounded by his circle of success stories. Doctors, lawyers, tech entrepreneurs, all of them staring at me in my simple black dress from a discount store. Everyone, meet my cousin Sarah, the family's, how should I put this delicately, underachiever. The laughter that followed felt like ice water in my veins, but I stood there, silent, just like I always did, because they had no idea who I really was. None of them did. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for 28 years, I've been the family disappointment. The cousin who never amounted to anything. The one they whispered about at gatherings, shaking their heads with that look of concerned superiority. You see, while Marcus was building his tech empire, and our cousin Jennifer was becoming a renowned surgeon, I was, well, according to them, I was drifting. No college degree they could brag about. No fancy career title to drop at dinner parties. No husband. No house in the suburbs. No picture-perfect life they could showcase on social media. What they didn't know, what I could never tell them, was that for the past 8 years, I had been serving my country in ways they couldn't even imagine. But that night, at Marcus's engagement party, everything was about to change. The party was exactly what I'd expected. A monument to Marcus's success. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting dancing lights across faces I barely recognized. Extended family members who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly appeared with their practiced smiles and loaded questions. "Sarah, honey," Aunt Linda approached with that tone reserved for speaking to children, or the mentally impaired. "Are you still between jobs?" I nodded, taking a sip of water. "Something like that." "Well, don't worry. I'm sure something will turn up eventually. You just have to keep trying. Keep trying." If only she knew that I had been trying. Every single day for 8 years, in ways that would make her suburban lifestyle look like a vacation. My phone buzzed, a text message that made my heart skip. "Package delivered. Mission accomplished. Welcome home, Major. Colonel Hayes." Major. The word that nobody in this room knew belonged to me. I slipped the phone back into my purse, hands shaking slightly. Not from nerves, but from the weight of finally being home after 18 months in places I could never mention. Doing things I could never describe. The weight of those 18 months pressed down on me like a physical force. 18 months of living under assumed identities. 18 months of speaking languages my family didn't even know I understood. 18 months of making life or death decisions that would never appear in any newspaper or history book. Marcus clinked his glass, calling for attention. The room fell silent as he began his engagement speech, filled with gratitude for his amazing life and incredible family. He gestured broadly, his eyes sweeping across the crowd until they landed on me, standing alone by the window. "You know," he continued, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I knew so well, "not everyone in our family has been as fortunate as Jessica and I." He looked directly at me. "Some people struggle to find their way. Some people never quite figure out what they're meant to do with their lives." The room grew uncomfortably quiet. I felt the familiar burn of humiliation rising in my chest, but I remained still. Silent, just like I had been trained. My cousin Sarah here is a perfect example of how different paths can be in the same family. While some of us built businesses and careers, others... He paused dramatically. Well, others are still searching. The fake sympathy in the room was suffocating. Head nods, pursed lips, the kind of looks you give to someone's unfortunate relative at a funeral. But hey, Marcus raised his glass with a cruel smile. "Not everyone can be successful, right, Sarah? Someone has to be the family failure." The words hit me like a physical blow. Family failure. In a room full of people I'd grown up with, people who were supposed to love me, I had been reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale. I set down my water glass and walked toward the door. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to remember who I really was beneath the weight of their judgment. But as I reached for the handle, my phone rang. Not the gentle chime of a personal call, but the sharp, urgent tone I'd programmed for only one type of contact. Military emergency. The room was still buzzing with uncomfortable laughter from Marcus's speech as I answered. Major Mitchell speaking. The silence that followed my words was deafening. Major Mitchell, this is General Patricia Hawthorne. I apologize for the interruption, but we have a situation that requires your immediate expertise. I glanced around the room. Every conversation had stopped. Every face was turned toward me with expressions of confusion and disbelief. General, I'm currently at a family function. Can this wait until— I'm afraid not, Major. We've received credible intelligence about a planned attack on the downtown federal building. You're the only operative in the area with the specific counterterrorism training we need. How quickly can you mobilize? My mind shifted instantly into operational mode. The room, the party, the humiliation. All of it faded into background noise. I can be on site in 20 minutes, General. Do we have satellite imagery of the potential entry points? Already being uploaded to your secure device. Major Mitchell, the General's voice softened slightly. I know you've just returned from Operation Silent Thunder. Your country owes you a debt of gratitude for what you accomplished overseas. But right now, we need the best, and that's you. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 8 years of secret service, of missions I could never talk about, of sacrifices nobody in this room could ever understand. Understood, General. I'm en route. As I ended the call, the silence in the room was absolute. Marcus stood frozen, his champagne glass halfway to his lips. Aunt Linda's mouth was actually hanging open. Jessica, Marcus's fiancée, looked like she'd seen a ghost. Sarah, Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. Did you just call yourself Major? I looked around the room at these people who thought they knew me, who had spent years making assumptions about my life, my worth, my purpose. Yes, Marcus. Major Sarah Mitchell, United States Army Special Operations. 8 years of active duty, 3 tours of combat deployment, recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross, the Bronze Star, and the Purple Heart. The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. I watched as the information slowly processed across their faces, confusion giving way to shock, shock giving way to disbelief, disbelief giving way to something that looked suspiciously like fear. But you never said, you never told us, Aunt Linda stammered. I couldn't tell you. Everything I've done for the past 8 years has been classified. The missions, the locations, the operations, all of it sealed under national security protocols. I picked up my purse, checking my secure phone for the operational details already downloading. While you've been building your businesses and your comfortable lives, I've been hunting terrorists in Afghanistan. I've been running counterintelligence operations in Syria. I've been protecting American interests in places so dangerous that most people can't even pronounce their names. Marcus set down his glass with a trembling hand. The times you disappeared, when you'd just vanished for months. Classified deployments. The last one lasted 18 months. I was part of a deep cover operation that I can't discuss, but I paused, looking directly at my cousin who had just called me a failure. Let's just say that the intelligence we gathered potentially saved thousands of American lives. The room was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Colonel Hayes. News crews are being deployed to downtown. Major, the situation is deteriorating faster than anticipated. We need you now. I looked around the room one more time, at these people who had spent years making me feel small, insignificant, worthless. You want to know why I never talked about my career? I asked, my voice steady despite the emotion building in my chest. Because while you were networking at cocktail parties, I was learning how to defuse improvised explosive devices. While you were worried about quarterly earnings, I was identifying and neutralizing terrorist cells. While you were taking family vacations, I was lying in the sand for 14 hours straight, watching through a scope to protect convoys of humanitarian aid workers. Jessica, who had always treated me with polite dismissal, stepped forward. Sarah, we had no idea. Of course you didn't. Because you never asked. You just assumed. You looked at my life, no husband, no house, no traditional career path, and you decided I was a failure. You decided I was the cautionary tale. I moved toward the door, but Marcus caught my arm. Sarah, wait. What I said earlier, I didn't know. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. For the first time in years, I saw something other than condescension in his eyes. I saw fear. Respect, maybe even a little awe. Marcus, let me ask you something. When was the last time you risked your life for someone else? When was the last time you went 18 months without seeing your family because your country needed you? When was the last time you carried the weight of knowing that if you failed, people would die? He released my arm, unable to meet my eyes. That's what I thought. As I reached the door, my phone rang again. This time, I put it on speaker. I wanted them to hear this. Major Mitchell, this is Secretary of Defense Williams. The entire room sucked in a collective breath. Someone dropped a fork. Mr. Secretary, I responded, my voice professional and calm. Major, I wanted to personally thank you for cutting short your leave to handle this situation. I know you've only been stateside for 36 hours after Operation Silent Thunder, but the President specifically requested you for this assignment. The President. I watched as Marcus's face went completely white. The intelligence you gathered during your deployment has already led to the disruption of 3 planned attacks on American soil. The Joint Task Force is calling your mission one of the most successful counterterrorism operations in recent history. I glanced around the room. Aunt Linda was gripping the back of a chair so tightly her knuckles were white. Uncle Robert looked like he might faint. Sir, I'm honored to serve. I'll have the situation downtown contained within the hour. I know you will, Major. Your country is proud to have soldiers like you. Give my regards to your family. The irony of that last statement wasn't lost on me. Will do, sir. As I ended the call, the silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. My secure phone buzzed with an urgent message. Major, convoy is mobilizing. Transport arrives at your location in 5 minutes. I looked around the room one final time. I have to go. There are people downtown whose lives depend on what I do in the next few hours. People who will never know my name, who will never know that their safety depends on soldiers like me, making the hard choices in the dark places of the world. As I spoke, the sound of helicopter rotors began to thrum in the distance, growing louder by the second. Sarah, Marcus's voice was barely audible. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The helicopter was directly overhead now, its downdraft causing the windows to rattle and the chandelier to sway. Sorry doesn't bring back the friends I've lost, Marcus. Sorry doesn't erase the nights I spent bleeding in a field hospital after an IED explosion. Sorry doesn't give me back the 8 years of family moments I missed because I was serving my country. The front door burst open, and 3 figures in black tactical gear entered. They moved with the precise efficiency of elite military personnel. Major Mitchell, the lead operator said, snapping to attention. Transport is ready. We have full tactical support standing by. I nodded, then turned back to the room full of my family. People who had spent years treating me like their greatest disappointment. But you know what? I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry for choosing service over comfort. I'm not sorry for choosing duty over ease. I'm not sorry for becoming someone who protects, rather than just consumes. As I moved toward the door with the tactical team, my phone rang one more time. This time, I didn't need to put it on speaker. The operator next to me did it automatically. Major Mitchell, this is Colonel Hayes. I wanted to inform you that the Joint Chiefs have approved your promotion to Lieutenant Colonel, effective immediately. The ceremony will be held at the Pentagon next month, with full honors. Lieutenant Colonel, the rank that represented not just my years of service, but my leadership, my sacrifice, my proven ability to succeed in the most challenging circumstances imaginable. Additionally, Colonel Hayes continued, I've been authorized to inform you that you're being considered for the Congressional Medal of Honor for your actions during Operation Silent Thunder. The formal review process begins next week. The Congressional Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration awarded by the United States government. The room was so silent, I could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor. Thank you, Colonel. I'm honored by the consideration. As we stepped outside, the helicopter sat on the mansion's front lawn like a metallic bird of prey, its rotors spinning in a blur of motion. Neighbors had come out of their houses, drawn by the noise and spectacle. But then something happened that I hadn't expected. The 3 tactical operators, instead of immediately boarding the helicopter, turned to face me. In perfect synchronization, they snapped to attention and saluted. It's an honor to serve with you, Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell, the team leader said, his voice carrying over the rotor wash. From inside the helicopter, 2 more figures emerged, both in dress uniforms despite the operational nature of the mission. One was a colonel, the other a brigadier general. They approached me, stopped, and saluted. Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell, the general said, I wanted to personally escort you to this operation. Your reputation precedes you, and it's my privilege to serve alongside one of the Army's finest officers. Behind me, I could hear gasps from the party guests who had followed us outside. Through the windows, I could see faces pressed against the glass, watching in stunned disbelief. But the moment that broke my heart, in the best possible way, was when Marcus appeared at my side. "Sarah?" he said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't even know how to apologize for what I said, what I've said over the years. I looked at my cousin, this man who had spent our entire adult lives making me feel small, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine respect, genuine awe, and genuine shame for how he'd treated me. The helicopter's engines roared to life as I climbed aboard. Through the aircraft's windows, I could see my family standing on the lawn below. For the first time in my life, they were looking at me not with pity or disappointment, but with something I'd never thought I'd see in their eyes: pride. 2 hours later, the hostage situation was resolved. 3 suspects neutralized, 43 civilians safely evacuated, explosive devices disarmed. Another successful mission, another day's work in the life of a soldier who had chosen service over comfort. As I stood on the roof of the federal building, watching the last of the ambulances drive away with the rescued hostages, my phone buzzed with a series of text messages. "Marcus, Sarah, I've been thinking about what happened tonight. I realize now that I've spent years being jealous of something I never understood. You're not the family failure. You're the family hero. I'm proud to be your cousin. Aunt Linda. Honey, I'm sorry for all the times I treated you like you needed fixing. You didn't need fixing. I needed understanding. Uncle Robert, I served 20 years ago, but nothing like what you've done. You make this old soldier proud." One by one, messages came in from family members who had spent years making assumptions about my life, my choices, my worth. Each message was an apology, an acknowledgement, a recognition of the service they had never bothered to ask about. But there was something else, something that surprised me more than all the apologies combined. A message from Jessica, Marcus's fiancée. "Sarah, I've been researching what you do all night. The Distinguished Service Cross is only given to soldiers who show extraordinary heroism in combat. I can't imagine the courage that takes. I'm sorry I never saw you for who you really are. You're exactly the kind of person I hope my future children will aspire to be." 3 weeks later, I found myself back at Marcus's house. Not for a party this time, but for a quiet family dinner. The conversation was different this time. Instead of asking when I was going to settle down or find direction, they asked about my service. Marcus had done his homework. He had researched military decorations, combat operations, the realities of modern warfare. For the first time in our adult lives, he spoke to me with genuine respect and interest. "I looked up the Distinguished Service Cross," he said over dinner. "It's the second highest military decoration for valor. Only 1% of service members ever receive it." "Sarah," Jessica said quietly, "I want to apologize for how I treated you over the years. I thought you weren't trying hard enough to build a life. I didn't understand that you were building something much more important." I looked around the table at these people who had finally learned to see me not as their disappointment, but as their hero. "I appreciate the apologies," I said. "I really do, but I want you to understand something important. I didn't serve my country to earn your respect. I served because it was the right thing to do. The fact that you finally understand that doesn't change the value of what I've done. Just like your previous inability to understand it didn't diminish that value." Marcus nodded. "You're right. Your worth was never dependent on our recognition." "Exactly. And that's a lesson that goes beyond military service. Every person has value that exists independent of other people's ability to recognize or appreciate it. The single mother working 3 jobs to support her kids, the teacher spending her own money on classroom supplies, the social worker advocating for forgotten children. They're all heroes, whether anyone acknowledges it or not." As I drove home that night, I thought about the phrase that had started this whole journey: family failure. For years, I had carried those words like a weight in my chest, letting them define how I saw myself in relationship to the people I loved. I had allowed their narrow definition of success to make me question my own choices, my own path, my own worth. But the truth was, I had never been a failure. I had been exactly who I was meant to be: a protector, a servant, a guardian standing between innocent people and those who would do them harm. The real revelation wasn't that my family finally understood my value. The real revelation was that I had always had value, regardless of their understanding. Tonight, as I sat in my small apartment, Not the mansion Marcus lived in, not the suburban house Aunt Linda thought I should want. I felt more successful than I ever had before. Not because my family had finally recognized my achievements, but because I had finally recognized them myself. My medals sat in a box on my dresser, not displayed for others to see, but kept as private reminders of the path I had chosen. The Distinguished Service Cross, the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart. Each one representing not just a moment of valor, but a life dedicated to something greater than personal comfort or social status. Tomorrow, I would report for my new assignment. The Army had offered me a position training the next generation of special operations officers. I would be teaching young soldiers how to navigate the complexities of modern warfare, how to make difficult decisions under pressure, how to carry the weight of protecting others. My family might finally understand that now, but more importantly, I had never forgotten it. The sound of my phone buzzing interrupted my thoughts. A message from Colonel Hayes. Lieutenant Colonel, your promotion ceremony has been scheduled for next month at the Pentagon. The Secretary of Defense will be presiding. Also, the Medal of Honor Review Board has reached a preliminary decision. Call me when you get this. I smiled as I set the phone aside. Whether I received the Medal of Honor or not, whether my family understood my service or not, whether anyone ever knew my name or not, I had already received the only recognition that truly mattered. I had served with honor. I had protected those who couldn't protect themselves. I had answered the call when my country needed me. That was enough. That had always been enough. And tomorrow, I would wake up ready to serve again.